Good afternoon, everybody. It's David Perlmutter from Quantum Listing, and thank you so much for joining us today on our webinar, Let's Get Smart 2020. Would have much rather been doing this in person, but this isn't a bad facsimile of it, and I think we're going to have a really great time here today. If Let's Get Social on Monday evening was any indication, it should be a very lively conversation. And please, this is an open mic session, so unless your dog is barking or your landscaper is outside your window, please unmute yourself. I say the landscaper because mine was just there a few minutes ago, and fortunately he just left. So, here we go. Uh-oh, wait, here we go. There we go. Sorry. Before we get started, we did a poll survey, and a lot of you have taken the survey already. It's a one-question survey, and it is all about what would you be willing to do if it were open. And so we give you about 20 different choices, and Julia will put the link in here. And next, before we really get into the discussion, we're going to show you what Let's Get Smart looked like back in the old days. Yeah. So this was the setup from last year. We sort of converted our booth into a theater. And so this is waiting for everybody to show up. And here are from Build Out and Linda Day Harrison, who were speakers last year talking about the DNA of CRE, and Mark Kalkorf and Amanda Bowen from Atypical.
Yay!
And Howard Klein and Linda. Howard, I think, will be with us today if he isn't already.
Yeah, I am.
I love these pictures.
I am, but for some reason I'm unable. It says that my webcam is already in use, and it's not.
Mysterious. Hello, Howard. This is Mike McClure from the Ad Art Sign Company. Mike is a multiple time speaker at Let's Get Smart, and he was actually one of the guys who inspired us doing this, because he would always swing by my booth on Wednesdays, and we'd have really long, interesting conversations about the state of the industry. And so thank you, Mike. And here is Howard with Susan Akbarpour from Mavatar. One of the more interesting interviews I've ever seen. I'll leave it at that for now. And this split screen is, I guess, Mike McClure and Andrew Bermudez from Digsy. This was like the first year that we did this. And I guess going back, Liz Holland from Able and Associates in Chicago is there. She, I got to tell you a little story about Liz. One of my pet peeves about ICSC is that Wednesday at RECon was always horrible. And that's really why we started Let's Get Smart, is because I basically wanted to have something to do on Wednesday, because 95% of the people who went to RECon are using Wednesday as a travel day. So I wrote a blog post in the blog post I basically challenged somebody from ICSC to come to Let's Get Smart and be one of our speakers. And Liz bravely took up the challenge, and she made sure that I let the world know, and I was very happy that she accepted the challenge. She gave a brilliant talk, and it's on YouTube, and it was all very data-driven about how many of the numbers that were being bantied about online retail versus brick and mortar retail were incorrect, and a lot of that came from the way that the Bureau of Labor Statistics calculated these things. So thank you, Liz. That was incredible. And John Sherry on the left, and Craig Wood on the right from Zen Amp Technology. And here are the three amigos who that would be Brian Donovan on the right from Donovan Real Estate Services, and once again, Mike McClure. And Pam Flora, who's a research director at Cushman and Wakefield, gave an awesome talk. We always would feature a little bit of wine at the end of our day, and that thing in the middle is our poll that we would do every year at RECon. And here are, oh, there's Bucky Beeman. Hello, Bucky. And Chris Farrell back there from Vanguard. I think he's there waiting for his In-N-Out burger. And so just, what a nice picture. All right, so.
Oh, I love that picture.
Yeah. And here, I'll go back since, isn't that a happy picture? Let's bring a smile to my face. And Howard and me, and Julia from our team, and Linda and me. All right, so thanks for taking that little walk down memory lane with me. And let's get started. Again, I cannot stress enough that this is not me talking. This is us having a conversation. So please don't be shy. All right, so we've prepared some questions, some prompts, and the there are points of departure. Don't feel chained to them, and there's some that we do want to get some feedback from specific individuals who are here. But first question here that we'd like to pose to you is, if you were to give a talk at ICSC this year before COVID-19, what would it have focused on? And so let's start with that. Anybody want to jump in? I can't see people raising their hands. Wow. Sarah, how about you?
Should we just should we just bust out and go for it, or are you gonna call on us?
Come on, all right, Sarah. What would you do? What would you talk about?
Well, I actually spoke to ICSC about a potential speaking gig. We spoke last year with Linda, my co-president Mark, Kristen from Brixmore, Dahlia from Rethink Connect, and it was a packed house, and it went really well. So
let me talk for a second.
Yeah.
This is Sarah Malcolm, by the way. Sarah is co-president of a typical and wonderful commercial real estate marketing agency, and everybody else on you, please introduce yourself, because not everybody knows who everybody is. Okay, sorry, Sarah.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So we proposed doing a couple different things and really kind of talking about different ways to innovate yourselves as a commercial real estate company, whether you're on the tech side or the owner side or broker. And we also thought it'd be really cool to kind of show what other industries are doing and how it apply to our industry, and how we can, as industry, just be more out of the box. So that was something that I was actually talking to ICSC about for this year. But obviously it didn't happen because we're all here.
Well, it hasn't happened yet.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So.
But are you going to the second part, or are you waiting? Because Sarah, the question would be, how would those topics have changed?
Well, first we have James Milner, who I think wants to jump in on this one as well. So James.
Go ahead, James.
Are we just focusing on the first question again?
It's your floor. You can give either one.
So, I think there were two prevalent issues specifically for me as it relates to retail. One of them is a lot of mixed use. And so I deal with a lot of student housing complexes, some of which have a mixed use component. What are the amenities that, what are the retail amenities that those tenants are looking for. And then I think the big other, question mark is co-working. And not that that specifically relates to retail, but I think it's a subject that we've all got an opinion on.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Anybody else want to jump in on this one?
I would have.
Yep.
I'm Deborah Hazel. I'm a writer and media consultant. I was an editor at ICSC, and I've worked with a lot of you all. I would have talked about, even though I've never leased anything in my life, except my rental apartment, I would have talked about, are we over relying on food and beverage to save our centers, whether it's open air or malls? Because even in a good time, when you're not giving away 75% of your space, like we may have to do, lots of restaurants go out of business within a first year. They're undercapitalized, restaurants fail, and they're really expensive to replace. And so I wasn't sure, and I'm still not, even more so now, that restaurants are going to be the savior of all those vacant anchors and all those vacant stores, but everybody was jumping on that bandwagon. Fitness too, but even more so, I was more concerned about food and beverage. I've been saying it for a couple of years, and honestly, now I guess, it sounds a bit self-serving. I would have said, yeah, I think we've got a problem here.
Yeah, it's a great, interesting point. And when I was developing shopping centers, one of my partners would always say, you can't over restaurant it, you can't over restaurant it. And because, shopping centers are called shopping centers for a reason. So, you're supposed to be able to buy goods and services there, not just go out to eat. And food halls are, food halls, but shopping centers aren't really food halls. There's one shopping center that was near my old office, and they had way over restauranted the shopping center, and it made it impossible to park there too as a result of that. So I think the restaurants did great, but the retailers suffered from that. So and are we over gymmed? And there's another one. So all right, let's see what we have next.
I have a comment, David.
Okay, great.
Goes back to the first slide. I think that
This is Linda
as
Day
Sarah
Harris, by the way, from
thanks. Sorry. Yeah, Linda Day Harrison, the broker list. What I think that I observe is that I think now those that were not embracing digital marketing or digital exposure for their businesses, I think now the light bulb's gone off. And I think a lot of mom and pops, and especially restaurant businesses, so many of them did not, because you could walk into restaurants and see employees, maybe sitting around or not doing anything. And I always used to make a comment to them like, why aren't you like on Twitter? Why aren't you on, oh no, we don't have that. And I always thought, why would these businesses just sit there and not, be a hand in glove with their people to be promoting the business? And I think maybe this woke people up and shook them up. So I think that there's going to be a bigger, embrace from people, even, the smallest business to the biggest business, that online marketing is vital to their business. They can't just rely on the sign on the marquee.
I think that's a great point. And I just did a webinar for Phillips Edison for all of their tenants on, best ways to use digital marketing, especially during COVID. And it was, it's kind of shocking, not just Phillips Edison tenants, but just all tenants in general, that how many are not and have not been using social. And what an opportunity this was to build your digital audience, to be able to communicate with them. Because what a lot of people were doing, from a tenant perspective, is just saying we're closed on their Instagram, and then they went MIA. That was it. No communication. And that is the biggest mistake you can make, during this time, is just cut the cord. You need, as a business, for your survival, to be able to keep the communication and the connection with your customer, because you can't do that in person.
Right. And that was my point, because I'm one of those people that I'll talk to a business owner. I walk into a mom and pop And that's the first thing I say to them is, are you on Twitter? Are you on Instagram? And they're like, no, we haven't gotten to that yet. I'm like, no, you don't understand. And I give them like a half-hour speech and they're like, oh my God, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, you have really good food here. You should be taking pictures. You should be behind the counter with a camera. You should be doing, and they're like, oh my God, I didn't know we could do all that. I'm like, yes, you can. And I literally have walked into restaurants where like, could you show us how to put a picture on Facebook? I'm like, oh my God, it's sad. So I hope that this shook people up.
Landlords are starting to do it. I'm working with ShopCore, which is a Pico competitor colleague, and I just literally got off the phone with the client, and I'm writing a piece just about all of that, how they're helping and keeping all of, especially restaurants, because those are the only ones that are open, informed, and working with them and teaching them how to do it and doing it for them.
Yeah, I'd like to add something. Most of the retail landlords have, I'm Howard Klein, and now most of what I'm doing is negotiating rent relief for landlords and tenants. So let me add, most leases have a promotional, or malls have a promotional fee. And I rarely see that. I see landlords collect it, and I rarely see them effectively use it. And I think that the malls should be doing this as part of their service for their tenants. Now, I'd like to add, since you showed the picture of me interviewing that woman, what was her name again?
Susan Akbarpour.
Right. So Susan and I had an issue with Susan's online software program, because either the way that she presented it or whatever, I didn't feel that her software at the time really promoted people going to a mall, because that's really what the mall owners is. They want foot traffic. They want people coming into the mall. Interestingly enough, in today's COVID-19 world, maybe her software would be very good as an alternative to walking into a mall, because it's going to be a while before people are really going to frequent a mall. But I really like the idea of the mall owners and the shopping center owners not only collecting their promotional fees, but actually making really good use of it to help those tenants make more money.
Yeah, especially now that having a petting zoo or something in the parking lot isn't really feasible. Why not do something like that instead? Let me just read you a couple of comments from Doug Jerem, who is in our first cohort of Let's Get Smart speakers. Thank you, Doug. It was a great talk on digitalization, and check it out. It's on our website. It's on YouTube. So Doug says, if you're not on social, you don't exist. And Melissa Swader is sort of jumping on that bandwagon, telling us that she was contacted by so many small businesses outside of CRE as well to answer questions about the panic of not being on social media. So, for us real estate brokers who don't have enough to do, we can either learn social media, or if we already know it, start helping others who don't. I say community service. Scott Stinson, you mentioned that you have a thing or two to say. Why don't we?
Well, can I just kind of freeform it? Because I'm just, listening to what other people are saying. I'm with Central Realty, by the way, in St. Louis. So kind of talking about getting on what Howard was just saying, we actually probably 5 years ago we do a lot of rural shopping center management. And we felt like our tenants we had to be promoting them. We don't take a promotional fund, but as part of our management fee, we actually run Facebook pages. We run Twitter accounts for some of the centers, and we promote everything our tenants are doing, because we feel if someone's searching for whatever the product is in that market, we want them to come up and we want their stuff to get circulated. And I think we're getting pretty good at it, to the point where, in a town of 6,000 people, I might get 6,000 views on something we post.
Wow.
Wow.
And in these small markets, I think if you'd asked me what we were going to talk about a month ago, I see a lot of, opportunity for entrepreneurial local retailers, restaurants, and obviously we know, we may have had too many local restaurants, but I think that opportunity was really there. And I think post pandemic, what we're seeing is that these guys, in order to succeed, they have to have the social media presence, but they also have to have the quote unquote frictionless buying experience. And it's been really interesting to me to watch different retailers and how they handle it. And I had a really bad experience with Home Depot 2 weeks ago where I ordered something online, said it was in the store. I never got it for 2 weeks. I never got the final email to pick it up. I called them, was on hold for an hour. I ended up canceling the order. Wow. Same thing with a really hot St. Louis local restaurant. She had, boy, I've saved my business, did a social media promotion about how she's making frozen pizzas. She's doing all this great stuff. You can order online curbside. I go to order online on a Saturday when she says she's open, says they can only deliver on Sunday. I call during business hours. Nobody answers. It goes to a full voicemail box. I called an old school restaurant who probably doesn't have the social media presence or anything. They said they had curbside pickup. They took my order over the phone the old fashioned way. Said, when are you coming? What kind of car are you driving? What do you want to eat? Give me your credit card information, all over the phone. Showed up. Lady stuck her head out the door, saw my car, walked out and gave me my food. It was great experience. So you got to be out there, but you also have to be able to execute, make it an easy transaction and make it work. And I think the people who have brick and mortar stores, I think we saw this today on earnings, that the Targets and the Walmarts were able to push through. They're calling it e-commerce, which I dispute. I don't know the definition. If you order online, but you pick it up from a store, is that really what we think of as e-commerce? I don't know. But the guys who have brick and mortar stores were able to push much more volume through their channel than Amazon was, which I think is good for our industry. I think we're going to see that brick and mortar is going to become more valuable after this. Okay, I'm done.
All right, thank you. So quick comment, which I forgot to do at the beginning, and this isn't the first time. I just want to make sure that I thank our wonderful sponsors, the News Funnel, who sponsor our webinars like this one, and they're a fantastic resource for everybody in our industry. They aggregate hundreds and hundreds of commercial real estate news sites and bring it all to you in your email and on your computer, and they'll even give you your own news feed if you want to use that to help keep people coming to your website with some frequency.
Yes, and shout out to Jen McCabe.
Yeah. Hello, Jen. I don't know if you're here, but if you're here in spirit, at least. So
I also wanted to mention that grocers, they've had a record-breaking year. The last couple of months. Just their sales. I think Albertsons had their best day ever in the history of Albertsons. I believe it was in March or the beginning of April. So, there are some sectors of the shopping center industry that are killing it right now.
Yeah. Cool. And that is true. I haven't been in a supermarket myself, but my family has. And thank God that the supermarkets are still there, and I hope they're taking care of their employees. I want to just point out something that Christina Conan was kind enough to put in the comments, and that is Facebook and Instagram announced that they are creating storefronts for businesses to set up shop for free on those two platforms. So if you are a retailer, they will make things really easy for you. Okay, so let's move on to our next question. And I'm not sure if Liz Berthollet from Newmark is here, but if she is, how do you think the changes in the workplace or office sector will influence the retail and restaurant industries? And if Liz isn't here, anybody else can take a first stab at this one.
I am here, thank you. As David just mentioned, I'm Liz Bertholet. I'm the research director for Newmark in the Boston office. So my thoughts on this subject will be more skewed to a top tier urban market. I think if you're talking about a downtown market versus a suburban market, the answer will be a little bit different. But clearly, the lack of foot traffic due to stay-at-home orders in our state are definitely impacting ground floor retail and the restaurant industry. I think when you look at catering and business, food, and events, all of those things are impacted from major work from home policies that are going on. I think certain tech markets like Boston, like San Francisco, Seattle, where the transition of work from home has been, I don't want to say seamless, but I think more productive than originally thought from some of these tech companies. So you could see more of their employees working from home for longer. We've heard announcements from different companies on a national, global, and local level sort of saying they're going to keep their people home through September. Some are saying through the end of the year. Some are saying indefinitely. So all of those things will impact urban retail specifically. And I mean, there's a little bit of cyclicality going on because in Boston, we have some tech companies that are related to the retail and restaurant industry specifically. So those types of companies have had major layoffs because they don't have the same demand that they did obviously pre-COVID. So, all of those things are definitely impacting the retail market. And one interesting thing that's going on in our state is, I think as of the 25th, office buildings outside of the city of Boston are allowed to open at 25% capacity. However, in the city of Boston, they aren't allowed to open until the beginning of June. So there's a dichotomy going on where they feel that the suburban office parks are a little bit safer, I presume, because you can spread out. There's less reliance on, elevators. There's less density. There's no public transit to worry about necessarily because you can drive to work. So I don't know what will happen in terms of how that impacts, suburban retail versus urban, but I would think if office buildings in the city aren't able to open as soon as some of the suburban ones, that just prolongs the impact that we're seeing on those retailers and restaurants.
Anybody else want to chime in on this one? Well, that was a very thoughtful answer, which is what we've come to expect from you, Liz, so thank you.
Thank you.
So our next question, and I'm going to ask Samantha Brown if she is available to chime in on this one. As we move forward, how do we find the balance between safety and privacy? I mean, there's tracing, tracking, heat scanners. Samantha, do you have anything you can share on this?
Yes. Hi, David. Thank you. I'm the assistant editor and a writer for PropMoto, which is a real estate technology publication. And I was actually, I recently wrote an article on this topic. So, all industries, but retail especially, will have to find a balance between, getting employees back to work, but also doing that in a safe way. And there's an additional challenge with retail in that it's public facing. So, engagement with customers, that kind of thing, it has to be safe. So one of the things this will require, I think, is going to be communication and constantly just being aware of what updates and guidelines are changing. So that varies state by state, that varies within, smaller localities. So I think that properties as well as the individual retailers should definitely be on top of that information. And I think it's going to require reliance on technology to be able to communicate that effectively. So, whether it's a tenant engagement app for property-wide communication, or whether it's something that the individual employer is using to get their individuals back to work, I think that technology is definitely going to play a big role in this. So one of the apps that I came across, Prosper at Work, is for shift-based hourly employees. It's a tool that they can use to, swap shifts. It has e-sign capabilities, but that they recently developed Prosper Safe, which is essentially it provides like a checklist to make sure that your employee is healthy before they come in for their shift. So there's a symptom checklist, and then there's also you can put in temperature test results too. So I know that the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission approved on-site temperature checks for businesses during pandemic. So, a lot of companies might opt to provide that for their employees and just kind of make sure that they're, ready to engage with the public and with each other. There'll obviously also be training, to make sure that they're following proper distancing, contactless transactions, that kind of thing. So, and it takes time to get those protocols right. So I think that using technology to ensure that, you can kind of hold your employees accountable, or your tenants accountable, that, hey, I got this information, I've read it, I've signed off on it, and this is what I'm going to do from now on. I think that's probably going to be, one of the most effective ways to ensure that they're, staying up to date with all of those changes. And the good thing about, using Prosper at Work or an app that's similar to that is that it doesn't require location tracking. So you're able to cross-reference, if an employee does get sick, you can see what shifts possibly, they had to overlap with for another employee, and, kind of mitigate transmission that way, rather than needing to infringe on privacy by GPS data or something that's kind of a little bit more invasive.
Interesting. Well, thank you. Anybody have a follow-up question for Samantha, or want to chime in on with their own thoughts?
I wanted to make a comment.
Sure.
My brother is in security technology, and he was in for Mother's Day weekend, and he told us that the industry is exploding on his side, from the hardware side, of all these big buildings and all these big properties are ordering all this technology to start screening people when they come into the buildings. And I don't even know what some of the stuff is, but he just said they're ordering so much stuff. He said the buildings are ordering it, the tenants are ordering it. They're all jumping into this kind of, as what she was just saying, they're ordering all this technology. And my brother said that he's warning them, what are you going to do with all this? Like, what are your policies? What are your systems? You can't just slap technology onto this type of a problem, because where's the medical side of it? In other words, if you have people coming into your building and you're going to have all these lines lined up to like manage this. In other words, now you've got people coming in, getting screened, like screening them before they get in the building. And he's telling them, well, what are you going to do when if you get somebody that's sick? What will you then do with that person? And then what will the people standing around that person have to do? And it just gets crazy.
Wow.
And he said, you're trying to mix medical and technology and security in this, and it's really complex, and you really need to know what you're doing and plan it, and not just say, oh yeah, we have sensors, or oh, we have this, because what happens when someone is detected? Now what? Do you pull them off? Do you quarantine them? What do you do with them? So I thought that was interesting.
That is interesting. And Linda, we may have to get your brother here to do a webinar with us one day, because this is obviously going to be a very hot topic coming down the road here.
But I didn't realize so many people were doing it. He goes, oh yeah, they're already ordering all this stuff. I'm like, wow.
How interesting. Thank you, Dennis Rooklin, for giving us the link to Forbes, an article in Forbes on the impact of coronavirus on retail. Have to check that out. Let's see. Let's move on to our next question. What are some innovative ways that that shopping centers can start using their anchor spaces? I know that one of the companies that we shared space with last year at ICSC RECon, Deal Point Merrill, was looking at vacant anchors at that point for self-storage places for cube marts. So
and housing. I think they're also doing apartments on some of her projects.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, I guess it makes sense. And it's probably very good for the retail, because you've got resident population who will walk by your store every day. Doug?
Yeah.
Multi-use.
Sorry, what was the question?
Multi-use. I just read an article today that Amazon is considering buying out Pennies and using their big boxes. That's a great combination.
Yeah. Doug Jerem puts in the chat that fulfillment centers for tenants is another good use. And Deb, you want to chime in on your?
Well, everything I've seen about whether it's. Oh, I'm sorry. No, after you.
Doug, you go first, and then we'll get to Deb.
Sure. Yeah. Apologies. So, I think I was writing about this earlier in the week in Washington Prime. I think it was one of the first ones to do it, but not just a fulfillment center, but as a service and an amenity to improve your ability to lease. So they're taking space offline from retail. They're building it out, equipped as micro fulfillment centers with the proper access, 24/7 access, proper vehicle loading, and as a tenant in the center, you can, at a lesser rate than retail, lease that fulfillment center space, which is something that I think we've been waiting for a long time, and now it's being pushed to actually happen. And I suspect you'll see every major landlord start to do this, especially as they get space back. And I think it's a great idea. It's on point for exactly what should be being done, and checks so many boxes. I think it's excellent.
Yeah, that is great. And since you were dead on with digitalization, Doug, I'm going to say that you're going to be right about this one too. I'm going out on a limb here. Last year at RECon, right before it started, I ran into my friend Jim Sylvia, who used to work for Stop and Shop as the head of real estate. And one of the things that he's working on now, he's on a board of a company based somewhere in northern Connecticut that has a technology to create micro fulfillment centers. And he was looking at it from the point of view of taking part of the supermarket footprint and creating a micro fulfillment center within the supermarket. When stores send a human to go out and pick an order in the aisles of the store, it takes about 45 minutes on average to do that. And with these micro fulfillment centers, you can do it in about 9 minutes. So huge savings in labor for the store. And from the customer experience point of view, it's much better, because I was in a Stop and Shop in Rhode Island last summer, and you had to battle your way around the people who were picking for these orders, and they're trying to do it as fast or a little as possible. They were a little aggressive in terms of like blocking you out of the things you might want to get. So I would much rather see that happen behind the scenes than right up front. Deb, talk to us more about last
From
mile.
what I've been hearing, that's what, especially in a suburban location, in urban areas, you are seeing vacant banks being taken by the Amazons, the whatever of the world, so that the vitamins that you ordered that they promised would get to you at 2 o'clock will get to you at 2 o'clock or maybe 3. It's that last mile between the e-commerce people or even a retailer who's sending it cross country, and they need it conveniently and close in to where people are living, as opposed to the big distribution centers that are way in South Jersey or in, Long Beach or someplace like that. So something like this, and they'd still end up paying probably more per square foot if it's an Amazon fulfillment center than the anchor store that failed was probably doing. I mean, they'll probably pay more than $2 or $3 a foot, and it will situate them within the 1 hour, but less than 2 hour delivery time for people in suburban communities. And people are predicting there's going to be a return to suburbia as millennials are getting married, have children, and maybe now aren't wanting too much of a close-in urban experience and being on public transportation. This may reverse urbanization with the pandemic, and now you'll have fulfillment centers close to where they live, so something can be delivered within a day, within an hour.
Yeah, that's a great point. And where are drones in this conversation? I haven't heard anybody saying, oh, let's get those drones going now so we can get our deliveries faster. It's still that UPS and FedEx guy showing up at my house every day. So anybody else want to contribute on this topic before we move on?
Samantha,
Yeah.
I know we talked a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you can go ahead.
Oh no, I was just introducing you into the question. Yep.
Oh yeah, I had read a Retail Wire had reported about Amazon possibly purchasing JCPenney, and they said, along with fulfillment centers or distribution centers, that possibly even making, physical stores to kind of show off some of their tech savvy, their contactless checkout that, doesn't even use cashiers. It just kind of does it through your phone. But Amazon has a growing women's clothing business with the introduced Amazon wardrobe. So that's another possibility of even subdividing an anchor. So some of it is, fulfillment or distribution space, and then a part of it could still be retail that could also help drive traffic to the property.
That is, they're amazing, Amazon. It really is. And they've got so much money to do whatever it is that they want to do. And the other thing that's really interesting is that they put growth and innovation ahead of profits, and they still get rewarded for it. So hats off to them.
I don't know, and I'll bring this up because I actually wrote a post about it today, and it's relative to Amazon, JCPenney, and everything else they're doing. It kind of got pushed aside because it was 3 weeks before, as we were coming into the crisis, but Amazon opened their Amazon Go grocery in Seattle, which is actually probably the model for a post-crisis grocery store. So, it's contactless checkout, no cashiers, no waiting in line. You can essentially come in and out without ever really having to come in contact with anybody. And they opened one in Seattle. There's only one so far. You've got to imagine that some of the JCPenney boxes would be good for that as well. But take a look at it pretty closely because it's got several things in there around not having to check out and shortening your stay inside the space that really sort of look like what you might write if you were gonna redesign a grocery store to build next year or the year after. So it's pretty interesting.
I've been surprised that hasn't taken off more because Sam's Club has been doing it for quite some time. You can literally go in Sam's Club, buy what you want, and as you're buying it, just take your phone, scan it, put it in the cart, and then when you're done at the end, you just say pay, and you go to the greeter or whatever you call them at the door, and you show them your phone, and you walk out. I love it. I mean, I hate going to Costco or any other stores now because I'm so spoiled going to Sam's Club and never having to go in a line.
I suspect Sam's hasn't yet rolled it out because from what I understand, the technology to do it is actually very expensive right now. The number of cameras and things involved is unbelievable. They may change if they have a working system. That may become a differentiator, so you can see them rolling that out.
Well, they have it now.
No, right, but I'm saying that they're also working on those very small margins. So up until now, there may not have been enough of a profit motive to do it.
Gotcha.
But that may not be the case. They may want to roll that out more aggressively now because you were asking how come it's not
Right.
more widely
Right.
used.
Yeah.
So it's not, what you're saying, Doug, is it's not the honor system. It's
Oh no,
trust but
not even close.
Oh,
If you're afraid of being on camera, it's your ultimate nightmare. There are cameras literally every foot or so on every inch of the ceiling, as well as I think in a lot of other dimensions. It's actually an incredible thing.
Right. And like I said, my brother being in security technology, it's fascinating to hear how this is exploding. I mean, it's just insane, the technology that's becoming just, common in all these stores.
All right. Before we move on to our next topic, we have a comment from Dennis Rooklin. Even well-positioned retailers may find they have to permanently close underperforming stores and take drastic cost-cutting efforts to bolster their balance sheets. It's easy to imagine the U.S. having 20% less retail space by the end of the pandemic, which equates to a 20% additional vacant retail space. So does that mean we've got a broker's market for all you brokers out there?
change is good for brokers.
Yeah.
True.
Fluidity.
It is. This is Scott, and I am seeing the retailers who can take advantage of these spaces are already doing it.
Good point.
They're already out there looking and watching.
Yeah, that's when I was out working on one of my tenants this week in downtown White Plains, and the rents, the smart landlords aren't waiting. They're either saying that the rents are 25 to 40% less than they were 3 months ago, or they're indicating, with nods and winks, that, make an offer that's reasonable and we'll make sure it happens. Very, very different environment out there. Howard Klein, I got a question for you. For people who operate businesses, what is their legal responsibility to their customers? Do they have to keep them safe?
That is a great question. And you may not like my answer. And I've got to say that it's a bit scary. Is everybody up for a bit scary for what I'm about to tell you?
I mean, you're a lawyer. I feel like you're always delivering bad news.
Well, well, that's part. I was just going
No
to
offense.
explain. No, I was just going to explain that part of when people approach me before they get in trouble, part of my responsibility is to identify things that can go wrong, not necessarily things that will go wrong, and then help guide them through the benefits and the detriments and how to end up in the best position possible. So this is going to be a little bit of what the retail businesses have to pay attention to for the most part, and the things that can go awry. And the first thing, in terms of legal responsibility, which I differentiate from an ethical responsibility, is that businesses are going to have to pay attention to the specific state laws, the specific COVID-19 state laws, local ordinances, executive orders, and public health guidelines. You really need to know what those are. And it may vary from local jurisdiction to local jurisdiction. For instance, in California, the governor said okay, you can start reopening for businesses, but the county has to come up with a specific plans. Orange County said, yeah, we're not going to come up with a specific plan. So guess what? Businesses in Orange County can't reopen. So there were those issues. And these laws and ordinances, these are minimum requirements. So you have the issue of face masks. My wife and I last week said, they're opening up restaurants. Let's sit outside where this was allowed. And we walked into a restaurant. None of the other customers, as they were walking in, were wearing masks. Some of the waiters were wearing their masks below their chin. And when we sat outside, the tables weren't separated. It was in the normal way. And as people walked by, while I may not have noticed it previously, during this pandemic, if they walk by me, they're literally right on top of me. Did not make us feel comfortable. And there's a reasonableness thing that there's going to have to be determined, but we're talking about enforcement. And that was the example that I used. It's one thing to say I'm going to do something and require your customers to do things. It's another thing to actually enforce it. The airlines apparently are trying to figure out how to enforce their rules that all of the passengers have to wear masks. Because if you're in a flight and someone is not wearing a mask, what do you do? So they're dealing with that. The next question is protecting your employees, is that part of protecting your customers? And I would say yes, because if you expose your employees, are you risking the transmission of the disease from your employees to your customers? And I'd have to say yes, that is certainly possible. You also, when you're talking about employees, you have to pay attention to any labor or union requirements and guidelines. So a lot of restaurants have union employees, so you have to pay attention to that. Now, here's the really scary part. Other laws and responsibilities, and these are not the ones that are specific COVID-19 laws. I believe that there probably already lawsuits filed, criminal and civil liability for reckless disregard for the health and safety of others. I think it would be similar to a driving under the influence or texting while driving. And what I mean by that is those specific laws having to do with DUI and texting, the determination is made that you don't even have to get into an accident. You don't have to injure or kill someone to violate the law. You just have to be acting in what has been determined as a reckless disregard for the health and safety of others. I'm going to take this another step. What if someone could actually trace that you're not wearing a mask during the 2-week period or so in which you could be contagious? You spread it to someone and they get sick and die. There are issues of involuntary versus voluntary manslaughter. What if they die? So I'd go, I refuse to wear a mask because it's my civil right not to wear a mask. And I'm out in Walmart and they're able to trace a spread to me and someone dies. I would consider, in my opinion, that not wearing a mask, which is not for your own personal safety, but for the safety of others, not wearing the mask and going into a crowded area, I think that there could be criminal prosecutions, and I expect to see that. Granted, there are going to be issues with proof and tracing, but Apple just came up with an update that has a tracing capability. I don't know that people are going to use it. And states are currently improving their own tracing capabilities. This is going to be a big business where they're going to be hiring businesses that are actually going to be little investigators trying to trace. There will also be civil liability for lost wages, income, and wrongful death. And again, imagine this. If you can trace an outbreak to a particular business, such as that restaurant that my wife and I went to, which we're not going to go back to. If you could trace it to that and then actually determine, that'll be easier to trace, frankly, than an individual. But if you could trace it to a restaurant and say, oh, you know what? The waiters weren't wearing masks. They didn't require masks of their customers when they came in. If they didn't do things like that, there will be liability, civil liability, if not criminal liability, for those businesses, and civil liability for anybody who's been injured or dies as a result. And then finally, there are going to be issues with regard to insurance coverage. I'm not an expert on insurance, but I would imagine that people should be looking at their insurance and to whether or not they have protection, very similar to even negligence. If it could be argued that they negligently operated and someone was injured or died or became ill as a result of their negligent handling of the situation, there may be insurance coverage. So that's the scary stuff wrapped up in a nutshell.
Howard, how about an umbrella policy?
I would imagine that will be available any way that insurance companies can figure out how to make money. But I would imagine it would be expensive. And if I was an insurance company, I would require inspections similar to the kind of inspections that they require for, fire inspections in restaurants, et cetera.
Well, what I don't understand is it would just be like saying if people got the flu and someone died, it's no different.
It may not be.
How do you prove that?
It's tracing. It's proof and tracing. That's really what it's going to come down to, is proof and tracing. And right now with COVID, they are able to identify hotspots. Perfect example is in the meatpacking plants. So in the meatpacking plants, I guarantee you, if those are unionized, the union is going to be taking action. And if they're not unionized, there's going to be some attorney who's going to go out there and file a class action lawsuit against those companies. And those are going to be issues. I mean, it's just as a legal, so to speak. Man, I see those things and I know that it's going to happen.
Larry Silvestri agrees with you, Howard. He says plaintiffs' attorneys, personal injury attorneys are going to have a field day.
Absolutely. This is a lawyer full employ, and it's interesting. I read things about how some of the large law firms are laying off people like crazy. In my case, I'm getting even busier, but that's because what I'm focusing on. But plaintiffs' lawyers, oh my, and defense lawyers. This is, maybe you ought to change and go into it, but and perhaps even criminal lawyers. There's going to be a whole cottage industry of this. Now, some people are going to say that that's bad, but honestly, if someone acts so carelessly that, Linda, you and I are very close friends. If I'm out there and I'm walking through Walmart, I won't even go into Walmart now. Right. If you get sick and something happens to you or John,
right?
Because people are going, I refuse to wear a mask because I don't give a damn about anybody else.
Right.
You're not going to be a happy camper.
That's going on now. There was a post today all over the internet about some guy in Costco saying, it's my freedom. I don't have to wear a mask. And Costco said, get out of the store. It's my store. Right. And it's my liability. Mm-hmm. And I don't want you in here to make my customers sick.
Yeah, and I don't understand why some of these places, you go into Costco, everybody's wearing a mask.
Right. But they're trying to enforce it.
They're trying to enforce it. I brought it to but they're much better than most of the other places. You walk into Walmart, and I didn't feel comfortable walking around, and there were, I would say, 40% of the people weren't wearing masks. And while I tried to avoid them, it was very difficult to avoid them. And eventually, Joanne and I just said, we're out of here. And I don't understand why why don't they require it, number one? And then if they require it, why don't they enforce it? What, are people not going to go to Walmart because of that? Serious.
I think that's what's sad. Here you have these poor people that work retail. They're not highly paid. They're putting themselves on the line with these crazies out there, having to confront people and say, you must wear your mask. I mean, this guy was like a psycho on this. You'll see it on the internet. It's all over the internet. Yelling at this guy, swearing at him, swear words. It's all recorded. It's like, that's what they have to do now?
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy.
Well, in any event, the issue was liability. So there you have it.
All right. Well, thank you. And just
I could jump in.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's Larry Silvestri. Haven't seen Howard in a while since ICSC law conferences. On this issue, I'm very averse to the plaintiffs' bar and what they do to small businesses. And really the costs, of course, flow back to all of us when they're shifting risks that really shouldn't be shifted. I agree with Howard that there are many things that are legitimate claims when someone has been negligent, but we're talking about something that's naturally occurring. It is no different than the flu, and we haven't, I mean, it's different than the flu, but the result of someone dying isn't. But we're going to get real creative, and we're going to have lots of lawsuits, and it's an issue of where does the risk really lie? The retailers who are trying to implement masks as a requirement, you're also going to see the viral videos showing them being essentially attacked by people who are going to sue them because they're infringing on the civil liberties of the individual. Crazy lawsuits.
Right.
Well,
but lawyers will do it.
Civil liberties, there's a constitutional right not to wear a mask. There's a constitutional right to communicate, but there is no constitutional right in putting someone else in harm's way. There's
also no constitutional right to shop at Walmart.
That's right. So you can, I can always choose not to shop at Walmart.
Right, right.
So from my perspective, and I do advise tenants as well as landlords, and I would go to them and say, hey, look, you have to, and there's going to be a lot of discussion as to what is reasonable or not. There is a red line, and the red line right now is where there is specific guidance from, say, the CDC or the government that will tell you this is what you must do. But that red line is only if you don't do that, you will have liability. The question then becomes, well, is that where you should be doing things? So if the government says, you can recommend it, does that mean that if you recommend it, you won't have liability? I suspect not. And it really depends upon what state or what locale, because I could see, this what is reasonableness coming down in different ways in different places.
All right. Let me just thank you, Howard. That was really illuminating and probably worth a show of its own.
Yeah.
Deborah, Hazel, you want to tell us about your observations in New York City?
Well, we're all still pretty much locked down, but from whatever I've seen, they're enforcing their signage at the stores. I haven't been at a Walmart, but the Stop and Shops, all of the supermarkets in my area are enforcing. They have staff, I think they have shifts where they are limiting the number of people. You literally see them counting and you have to wait to enter the stores. And if you are not wearing a mask, they are not letting you in. At one point, and I think they've eased it a little, it was only one person per party. Unless you had a child with you that you had to control, they were not letting two people from the same family going in together. So that way they could accommodate more people, more parties inside the store. But no mask, you don't get in. They were asking you to check your backpacks or whatever at the front, so that way a dirty backpack wouldn't enter the store. But it's private property. I mean, I'm not an attorney. I'm a reporter. I talk to lawyers all the time, but they've been enforcing it here.
Samantha Brown, would you like to share with us what you put in the chat there? I think it's a great point.
Yeah, in New Jersey as well, by the way, they're enforcing it. You go into a grocery store, you have to wait in line because they're only letting so many people in. You have to wear your mask and you have to follow, they have traffic patterns specifically so that, too many people aren't in an aisle together. And they're definitely enforcing it here. But I just think, businesses that are upholding these standards are, in the long run, they're going to have their reputation counts. Melissa mentioned corporate responsibility, and that comes into play a lot more now, even with like investment decisions. So I think customers pay attention to it and they want to frequent places. I mean, Howard, you mentioned, you were uncomfortable in Walmart, you were uncomfortable at that restaurant. So you're not going to go back. And so if businesses want shoppers to come and they want to see traffic, they're going to have to make customers and employees feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Dennis Brooklyn, are you available to speak, or are you muted? Or I can try to unmute you because you linked. Give him a moment. Not sure if that is going to happen, but he posted in the chat an article from Reuters, and in the article it's talking about corporate America is seeking legal protection for future coronavirus lawsuits, and he also makes the point that this is going to affect houses of worship as well. It's not just
what about schools? What about all these children that want to go back to school?
Sure. It's, every single part of our
I mean, I think that's crazy.
There's a balancing act, and I don't have an answer, and I have a particular perspective. I'm looking to protect people. All right, so that's my perspective. But yeah, I think that's a good question with regard to schools. I suppose you can homeschool if you can do it. You can homeschool your student, but public schools are there and available to everyone. And not everybody can be homeschooled. Not everybody has access to high-speed internet and computers. These are not simple questions to answer, and everything's going to be handled, on a case-by-case basis, ultimately.
All right, let's move on from all that good news. Sarah,
I told you. I warned you in the beginning.
Yeah, you did. Forewarned is forearmed. Sarah, I've got a question for you.
Sarah had to hop off. I think Linda might be able to chime in for a second.
Melissa's on here. She's a CRE marketing expert. Melissa, are you still with us?
Melissa's here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. So the question we'd like to pose to you is, how is the CRE marketing community responding to the ongoing changes, and what should you be doing to address your marketing concerns?
Yeah, I know I got that question recently. You know, I was interviewed for a couple of other articles, and that was one of the major questions about how the commercial real estate firms are doing or what changes they're making. And, you know, I sit there kind of in this state of, well, I didn't change anything. I mean, I just did what I normally do, but I know that there were some people that were, you weren't even allowed to talk about COVID. You weren't even allowed to even say anything in conversations, you know, like when you put that fear in somebody, then they react to it. So as we continued to market, I didn't ever say, we are still here for you. We are still working for you. Because if you're a great firm, there should be nothing that would interfere with your state of business, the way that you would just conduct it. Because at the end of the day, no matter if we had a pandemic or we don't, we're still here to be a part of the solution. So in the marketing part of things, it's just, I think I kind of maybe even pushed out a little bit more, just to let people know that we were still just conducting business as we normally would. Earlier, you guys had mentioned something about, you know, what happened with social media. And I think that it's interesting because there was a lot of panic in terms of, oh my God, I can't believe I don't have my social media site set up. You guys mentioned something about the retail stores or malls. You know, there's one out here that, you know, an outlet mall, that they were keeping everybody, you know, informed. Every time like somebody would open or run a special, they would try to promote them. They would send them to redirect them to their business Facebook page. And I think now I've seen a lot of commercial real estate advisor. I'm really happy that they're starting to create their own Facebook pages. So they are starting to take their individual responsibilities on their own branding and their own marketing. So I think the Twitter family and I think LinkedIn, you know, I think everybody kind of, you know, I think we just kept going. I don't know if anyone really stopped. I think there were some adjustments that needed to be made, but you know, marketing is marketing. You can't stop that. It's all about your brand awareness.
Interesting. And thank you for that. You know, it's funny, in my brokerage business, I have really sort of struggled with whether I should, you know, send out the email blast that I usually do. And I'd sort of opted against it, but you know, and I can tell you the daily onslaught of, you know, 300 or 400 listings I get in my brokerage business hasn't stopped. So I guess, you know, maybe I need to rethink that. Because, you know,
Can I just chime in one more thing? I'm just going to plug something really quick because, you know, there was a lot of questions that were coming in over the last 2 months. And even though I started the group back in January, I really didn't promote it until just recently. I didn't announce it. But I do have a Facebook group that I did start for women in commercial real estate, and I can post it in the link. But what I found is a lot of these women in real estate, and men are welcome, of course, but it is there to elevate women. And what I'm finding is, when you start talking about best practices, or when you start to communicate about what are the things that are going on around you, no matter what city you're in, it's amazing to me to see the kind of collaboration, even like here, that we're going through these questions and we're learning from thought leaders in these different areas on best practices and what we can look forward to or what we can anticipate. And for everything that we do, we can take away something from these calls, or if you are on the Facebook group. And I just really encourage you all to, you know, join, because it is there to elevate, you know, women, and it's elevate, you know, the men who are working with women, and more importantly, just brand awareness.
All right, well, great, thanks. From the chat, let me just bring everybody up to date. Robin Hendricks says, our marketing didn't change much. While we did reduce our media buys, everything else has been moving forward. And Deb Hazel said that there's a Facebook group called Reopen, Rebound, Recover, in which retail real estate marketing professionals are exchanging data and best practices. And you can contact her if you have trouble finding that group. So my screen isn't being shared, I understand, and that's because there was a wacky glitch on go-to meeting. So let me, I'm not sure how to fix that, but let me go back to our next question. Hang on. And I know we're running long, but I think, the conversation is great. And, I hope you'll stick with us. We will send out the video eventually. And if you can stay to the end, because we'll reveal the results of our survey so far. So obviously, big country, everything's a little bit different wherever you are. What geographic trends and changes are we seeing residentially, and how may this impact the retail industry? Anybody want to take a stab at that one?
I read that in Southern California, home sales in April were the lowest since like 1920 something another, which it shouldn't come as any surprise. But I think a place like Orange County is not going, I think it'll bounce back, but there'll be a hangover, which is kind of one of my favorite words right now. And I think it really depends upon the locale. Las Vegas, I see bigger problems because people aren't going to be, Las Vegas is so dependent on tourism and hospitality and casinos. That's going to come back very slowly.
Yeah, so I play a lot of poker with a bunch of people from my town, and 2.5 months ago, we all decided that poker was like a game designed to transmit disease. With all the sitting together and the chips and the cards passing, through different hands.
You can do it online.
Well, we have switched to online, so but I got to tell you, it's not the same.
No, it's not
the same. I'm with Zoom or whatever, and I drink way too much when I play poker online. So, in New York City, I know that people are moving to the suburbs, or they're renting homes in the Hamptons or wherever they can, and I think that is going to it's got to be hurting an already devastated retail industry in New York City, and it'll it's a zero-sum game. So I guess the suburban retailers will get the benefit of that. But
well, David, I heard my dad's in Florida, and I heard he said that everybody in New York was going to Florida now. I was like, what?
I'm in Florida, and they are fleeing to Florida.
Oh, that's what he said. I'm like, what?
I looked at Florida at one point. I'm looking to flee, but I'm moving, God help me, to Vegas.
Well, but he was saying because of the virus, like they were just like leaving.
Yeah.
Yes.
They didn't want to be cold. I think it was a whole lot of people left because you didn't want to be cold. So there was an interview with some young woman who said, I could stay at my roommate's dad's house, and at least I can go outside and sit in the sun.
Yeah.
That's really what you do.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we'll be at RECon next year.
Yay!
What do you think we'll all be talking about?
About this.
Yes.
This will be the topic.
I think that's probably not a very controversial answer.
Well, my question is,
yeah.
Did we hear from everybody? I see people here that haven't said anything, and I don't like that.
Yeah, thank you, Linda. Let's see. Hold on.
Did everybody say something? I want to hear from everybody.
Okay. There's more in text. New York is losing people, according to Deb, and Melissa posted the Facebook group in the chat, and Deb also posted a Facebook group that she referenced earlier, and Julius points out, we talked earlier that with the transition from urban to suburban is being expedited for young professionals. James Milner is taking a Darwinian approach and says it's going to be survival of the fittest. Tandalea, do you want to unmute yourself? I'd love to hear what you've got to say and what it's like down in Atlanta.
How you doing, David? I guess yes. A couple of days ago was the first time you and I talked. Hello, everyone. I am
Hi.
commercial realtor in Atlanta with Keller Williams Commercial. So I've been in the business for about 6 years, and I can say the Atlanta market is definitely seeing some changes. Most of the stores that are closing, they're all housed, they are housed here in Atlanta as well. So Pier 1 Imports, for example, 8 stores are closing in Atlanta alone. So trust me, I can see those spaces filling up because of depending on where they're located. There's going to be some serious changes as far as offices. I have a few friends that are still left in corporate America, and their company said that they're going to be at home until the end of the year unless something changes. But the company's still going to keep the office space because they haven't totally decided what they want to do and move forward. I can see things are not, the spaces that are emptying out restaurants, because we're having quite a few restaurants here in Atlanta that are shuttering and have been here for a very long time. 30 years, 10 years, they've got a reputation. And if you've ever been to Atlanta, you can eat your way through the city and just be happy every time. And a lot of those favorite restaurants are closing. Just saw an article today that the P.F. Chang in the Dunwoody area closed in April in silence. Nobody knew they were closed. That news just came out and it's May. So I don't think a lot of these restaurants are going to be filled back up with restaurants because they had such a large space, and a lot of people in Atlanta are not running back to these restaurants like everyone thought they would. Some people are still fearful of going out, and they'll either take it to go or have delivery. So I'm not seeing as much of a change as everybody thought Atlanta would have.
All right, well, thank you for that. Let's see. Ted Claney and Natalie and Robin and James. I don't think we've heard from you, James McCall, that is. And Nikki Metzger and Christian Hayes. If any of you would like to unmute yourselves, introduce yourselves, and tell us what you're seeing on the ground, we would love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, sure. Ted Claney from Dallas, CBRE. Let me know if this mic works. Sometimes it's a little flaky on me.
All right, so far so good.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we're open back up, and we're going into our second level. 25. Our restaurants are going from 25% occupancy to a 50% occupancy.
Wow.
So with that opening up, I mean, we've had a few notables. We've had some long-time restaurants that have shut down, some institutions in the city that just haven't been able to make it. A lot of them are pivoting, and some are putting up some halfway decent numbers. So once we get to 50% capacity, I think we're going to see what's going to happen. I think the big shakeout is going to be a few months down the line. When restaurants and retailers, after being closed or severely limited in their business operations for 2 months, the ones that can see if they can make it out will see if they can see the way, or see if they can get enough business back to pay for the 2 months they've been down. So I think that's going to be the real key, is what happens in the next 6 to 9 months, and we could see another shakeout.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, Ted. And is in your the sales or leasing mostly?
Leasing.
And are you seeing any activity, or are you?
Yeah, there's still some things going on. People still want to be there. I mean, there's spaces that are coming available every day. But we're still seeing activity. It's, anybody who's well capitalized, got some money behind them, they're looking for the second gen restaurants. They're looking for the good spaces in the grocery anchored centers and the power centers. And I think landlords, I don't know if they know how to price yet. And so there's been there's a lot of slow pedaling, I think, until we figure out what what pricing is going to be for leasing. When I hear from my capital markets people, it's the same way with them. They're people are not really sure what pricing is. Some deals are going through at full price with no issue. Some leases are going through at full price with no issues. Others have kind of hit the pause button.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think if you've got money, it's a good time to have money, and because you're going to have your pick of the litter.
Exactly right.
Anybody else who we haven't heard from yet like to say anything?
Well, Christian posted something very interesting about the vaccination.
Oh yeah. So yeah, okay, I see it now. Thank you, Linda. Christian Hayes says, as soon as there is a vaccine rolled out, I imagine things will start to approach the old normal shortly thereafter. It certainly is going to be a critical thing. He feels that it is likely before Thanksgiving. I only hope you're right. Nothing wrong with being optimistic. And Dennis says he's seen cap rates in Southern California go up recently. So that's good. So now the big reveal. Let's have a look at the survey results so far. Hang on. Let me, okay. You can see my screen again. Okay. So we've had 44 responses so far. And let's look at the summary. So the question we asked was, which of the following are you willing to do tomorrow if it were open? And we can pick a few. Well, apparently there's a lot of people who are looking kind of shaggy right now because 50 have said they want to get a haircut more than any other thing. I don't follically challenged. I'm not sure how you say it. So not an issue for me, but hey, I understand. People want to go to a restaurant. 45% of people are dying to go out to eat. And malls, not looking too good for malls. 23.8% are willing to go to an enclosed mall, whereas big box stores are getting the nod here at 45.2% would go to a big box store. Clothing boutiques, 11.9%. One wonders, is that because they're small, or it is because people don't have the money to spend in a clothing boutique? 23.8% are willing to go to the gym. To me, the gym is kind of like being at a poker table. I'm not sure that's one I would do, but until there's a vaccine or something safe. Go to a bar. In spite of what happened in Wisconsin, where I heard when they opened up the bars they were packed, we seem to are sensible. I'm not going to say sensible because I don't want to be judgmental here. You want to go to a bar, it's your business.
Right.
12%, 11.9% want to go to a bar. A lot of people want to go to 52.4% want to go to the beach. I was surprised that 26.2% said they would use a public restroom, but I guess when you gotta go, you gotta go.
I was just gonna say, what are you gonna do? Oh.
Linda, you just got to hold it.
Yeah, I see that.
I don't know, maybe we should all buy stock in whoever makes the pens. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh my God.
This is what a hand sanitizer is for. I guess you can pack a little Lysol there too. I don't know. 23.8% would go to a movie.
That's shocking. That is shocking.
Yeah. And concerts, only 14.3%. 14.3%, same number, would go to a concert, would go to a sporting event. Public transportation, only 9.5%. Understandable. Like New York City is, closing down the subway at night so they can sanitize everything. But the first person gets on in the morning and
There you go.
coronavirus asymptomatically, and what good's all that sanitizing going to do? Fly somewhere, 21.4% are willing to get on an airplane.
That's amazing.
Now, I know that, in all the press, one of the things that's been like a priority for opening up, for a reason that I don't understand because I'm 57, tattoo parlors. The people who took the survey are a similar demographic to me, because only 2.4% a tattoo parlor.
Well, that would not be the first place I run after being in quarantine.
Well, maybe my tattoo will say I survived COVID-19.
That's it.
Visit an aging relative, and this is one that strikes because my mom, I haven't seen her in person for 2.5 months. I talk to her every day pretty much, but for 33% would visit an aging relative. And look, you have to balance out any risks to their health with their need to feel loved, and that's a tricky one. And then there are 14% that wouldn't do any of this stuff. And there was a glitch. So the sporting event one actually came up twice because I changed some words in there. To all the people who are signing off, thank you so much. And one person did a write-in for attending church, and in retrospect, that was something that should have been included. And let me just briefly read you the comments from folks that wrote in comments. First, they want to know the results of our survey, so sure, well, hopefully you'll get the results. Another comment was, more people over 85 have died than those less than 80. We need to be brave and go back out there. Again, these are people's opinions, and we're not going to agree or disagree with them here in this forum. So anxious to get out again. Yeah. Tell me about it. I went to my hairdresser yesterday, dined at a restaurant outdoors for lunch. This person is jumping right back in. And thank you for whoever is looking forward to Let's Get Smart 2020. We hope we didn't disappoint you. And somebody is in a more open state than Connecticut, has already done all the above things, or many of the above things. I know that there was a Matt McCready concert yesterday that was packed, apparently. And then somebody said, we don't feel safe yet. I'd only be comfortable with a haircut if the salon was limiting people in the building and requiring face masks. It's time to go back to real life. I've gotten my hair cut already and visited the beer and grocery stores, but that's about the extent of what I'm willing to do. Still haven't had takeout or gone through a drive-through. If I don't need it, I'm not doing it. I would do all the above if participants were wearing masks. We can actually do most of these things now in Arizona, but I have a high-risk family member, so I am staying home as long as possible.
Yeah.
Already have done some of these things, even though we're trapped here. I was considering going to the beach last weekend. I ended up deciding against it based on pictures from the Ocean City Boardwalk. I'm glad I didn't. There are a lot of people, not all social distancing, and many not wearing masks. Until we understand more about how the disease works, I don't feel comfortable exposing myself and my family. Then we got a still too soon. And the last comment we have so far is, I think we should fully reopen everything within the next 30 days and wear face masks and gloves and be 6 feet apart until such time as the vaccine has been fully distributed, which could start happening as early as October 2020. So thank you, everybody who participated in the survey. And it really, look, we're the very broad range of what people feel comfortable with. But it does kind of tell you that opening up isn't going to be a panacea because people are still very cautious. And, until we get, vaccines and testing that's sort of universal and contact tracing, I don't think that people really feel comfortable. I mean, I go out, I wear a mask, I wear gloves, but there's a level of anxiety, I think, that most people feel when they're out, especially when you encounter somebody who's not wearing a mask, the way, Howard and some of you have said. So I want to say.
I have a comment.
Go, please. Yes.
My comment is that everybody keeps talking about the vaccine. And my concern is so many people won't even get the vaccine. So it's still not comforting to me, even though I know it's progress, but it doesn't make it go away.
Yeah, that's true. There's, hopefully if you have a vaccine and somebody doesn't have it, they won't be able to infect you. But you're right. I mean, to the extent that there are, it may not just go away because, and then what happens if it mutates? So.
Right.
Treatment may be just as important. An effective treatment would be great.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
you remind David. Who was it that mentioned that how similar this might be to the flu and all of that? And you just reminded me. We're talking about the vaccine. I get a flu shot every year. I get a pneumonia shot. It's not every year, but now I've got two different types. So there's a certain level of comfort that I have when I get a flu shot. And the problem is right now there is no vaccine. There is apparently no cure. You have no idea. I mean, there are some people who are fairly young who, in their 40s who've died from this, that they have no way of knowing right now how people are going to be affected by this, except that someone like me, I'm in a high risk category. I've got a number of risks and everything, but I also know someone who was, I think, 49, who died of a heart attack. And I asked the question, did they check to see if he had the coronavirus? And they said no. But he didn't have any symptoms. His weight was fine. And boom, all of a sudden, 49, lives here in Summerlin, or lived here in Summerlin, died of a heart attack. So there's so much
Howard,
unknown.
I know, but I think my point I was making about the vaccine is that a lot of people don't get any shots. I mean, they don't believe in shots. That's what I meant. In other words, if there was a shot tomorrow, what percentage of people would get that shot? Is it 50%? Is it? I don't know what the stats are. I don't follow the medical world, but a lot of people don't get flu shots either.
Well, I get flu shots, but I wouldn't get a vaccine. If a vaccine came out in October, November, December of this year, I would wait 3 or 4 months to see how many people died or got ill from the flu shot, because they would have rushed it out so fast that they would have overlooked normal protocols. And to me, I can afford to do everything I need to do in the house. Granted, it's not the best thing in the world, but I can afford to do it. Not everybody can.
Right.
But for me, because of my age and my health, I would rather wait a few months to see, how this stuff reacts. And, if it came out in December, that's great. And if it's working, and then I go, hey, you know what? They're singing praises 3 months later, and I believe the praises, then I'll get a shot.
Everybody got to do what they're comfortable with, and
right.
And but the important thing is, not to do harm to others.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. This was a great way to spend an afternoon. Really appreciate it.
Wonderful job.
Yes. Thank
Yeah,
you.
great job, guys.
Thank you. And,
Linda, Dave?
and Linda,
Good survey.
thank you for helping rally the troops here, and Julia, thank you so much for all the help you do in putting this together. Everybody who is still here, thank you for your participation. It was really wonderful. And
Thumbs up.
for those of you watching in the future, we hope you got something out of this, and please come back to our webinars in the future. And if you're not a Quantum Listing member, please join. I do want to say that one small plug for Quantum Listing is that we do have things on our website that make it easier for you to do whatever you need to do with your real estate from the comfort of your home computer. Not just searching for space, but our partners like StackSource have a way for you to arrange for financing, or at least the initial parts of the financing from a online portal. And Land Checks, one of our newer partners, has a wonderful technology that lets you do virtual due diligence they've consolidated and aggregated dozens of different databases into one streamlined system, and it just takes seconds to get all that information, whether it's DEP or traffic, all sorts of great stuff there. And so check those out next time you're on the site. And thank you, everybody. Stay healthy, stay safe, and look forward to seeing you all in Las Vegas next year.
You got it. Thank you very much.
It's just fun to be together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye all.